Bullies lays hands on the wrong shy woman 20 seconds later. Mafia Boss stepped in and did this. Greyhaven is not a city. It is a steel trap soaked in salt. The air, even here at the annual Taste of the Harbor Food Festival, smells like fried dough, diesel fumes, and the deep, metallic chill of the North Atlantic. I hate festivals. I hate the unpredictable noise. My name is Maisie Stewart, and I am a creature of silence. I live my life behind the soundproof angled glass of the Wave Nest 92.7 broadcast booth. I understand equalization and compression. I understand the precise, mathematical comfort of a well-balanced audio signal. I do not understand people. Tonight, I was supposed to be invisible. I was just the tech, running the remote soundboard for the station's live coverage. I kept my head down, my thin fingers cold on the faders, my headphones clamped tight against the chaotic roar of the crowd. The bass from the main stage vibrated in my teeth. A low, physical assault. I just had to get through the next hour, pack my cables, and retreat to the padded, quiet sanctuary of my studio. The noise profile changed before I saw them. The ambient roar of the crowd was pierced by a new sound laughter that was sharp and abrasive, like breaking glass. Troy Halbert and his pack. I knew who he was. Everyone in Greyhaven knew. His father was a commissioner on the Urban Safety Commission, a man who moved through the city with the destructive entitlement of a wrecking ball. Troy smelled like expensive whiskey and arrogance, and he was heading straight for my station. He loomed over my console, casting a shadow on my mixing board. "Hey, sound girl," he slurred, his voice a sudden, painful peak in my headphones. "Stop this crap! Put this on!" He shoved a phone at me, the screen showing some obnoxious, bass-blown track. My throat tightened. "I can't. This is a live feed. It's balanced for the announcer's vocals." "I didn't ask for a technical manual," he snapped. "I said play it." "Please," I whispered, my voice sticking. "I'll get in trouble. The station. The signal is routed." That is when he grabbed me. His fingers clamped down not on my arm, but on my wrist. They were hot and impossibly tight, the grip instantaneous, digging past skin and muscle to grind against the delicate bones. A sharp, white starburst of pain exploded behind my eyes. "You work for me tonight, little mouse," he sneered, his friends laughing behind him. Panic, cold and metallic, flooded my lungs. I tried to pull back instinctively, but he just laughed and squeezed harder. "Let go!" I gasped, but the words had no sound, no power. I twisted, a futile, desperate movement. My other hand, slick with nervous sweat, struck the base of the heavy broadcast microphone on its stand. It tumbled. It did not just fall. It crashed onto the wooden decking, and the sound of the impact, amplified through the entire festival speaker system, was a deafening, apocalyptic thud. A high-pitched wail of feedback followed, a physical shriek that made the entire crowd cry out and clap their hands over their ears. The music stopped. The festival stopped. In the sudden, ringing silence, all I could see was my best microphone lying on the planks, its cable coiled near Troy's expensive boot like a dead rope. Troy's face, which had been smug, contorted with rage. He still had my wrist. He raised his other hand. 1 second, the air was sucked out of the world. 5 seconds, I saw the reflections of the string lights warp in his furious, wet eyes. 10 seconds, the smell of the sea and the spilled beer was choking me. I was frozen, just a girl who broke the sound. 15 seconds, a shadow detached itself from the edge of the festival lights. It moved with an impossible, liquid grace, not hurried, but inevitable. A black sedan, as sleek and dark as an oil spill, had glided to the curb. It hadn't been there a moment ago. At exactly 20 seconds after the microphone hit the deck, the back door of the sedan opened. A man stepped out. He was not large, not in the way Troy's loud friends were large, when he was compact, dressed in a black turtleneck and a tailored wool coat that seemed to absorb the colorful lights of the festival, leaving only shadow. He did not run. He did not raise his voice. He crossed the 20 feet of open space between the car and my booth in 3 long, unhurried strides. He ignored Troy. He ignored the broken microphone. His eyes found mine. They were dark, deep, and utterly unreadable. He did not hand me his coat. He took the heavy, expensive wool from his own shoulders and, with a single economical movement, draped it over mine. The weight of it was shocking. A sudden, warm shield against the cold air and the 100 staring eyes. It smelled faintly of expensive cigars, leather, and the cold night itself. His fingers brushed my shoulder as he settled it, and then he rested his hand on my console. His fingers splayed wide, covering the hand Troy was still crushing. Let her go. His voice was a revelation. It was low, a deep resonance full of gravel and velvet. It was not a request. It was not a command. It was a simple, non-negotiable assessment of fact. Troy, shocked by the audacity, finally focused on the intruder. He puffed out his chest. "Who the hell are you? This bitch broke the station's gear. She's—" "You have 3 seconds," the man interrupted, his voice never rising an inch in volume. He tapped one long finger on the red live light of the broadcast camera aimed directly at us. "That's 1. The crew camera on the gantry is 2. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod toward the fried dough stand 20 feet away. "And the 2 vendors recording this on their phones make 4. I had not noticed. My entire world had shrunk to the burning pain in my wrist. "I am Troy Halberd," Troy yelled, his voice cracking with humiliated fury. "My father runs the Urban Safety Commission. I will have your name. I will have you." It happened faster than a sound wave. The man Guido Balestra, though I would not know his name for 3 more minutes, did not throw a punch. He simply shifted his weight, his eyes never leaving Troy's. He used his thumb to press a single, precise point on the back of Troy's hand, just below the knuckle. Troy's grip did not loosen. It exploded open as if he had touched fire. A high, thin yelp tore from his throat. The silver whiskey flask he was holding in his other hand clattered to the deck, spilling its contents over my cables. Troy, blinded by rage and alcohol, swung a clumsy, telegraphed punch. Guido Balestra was not there. He stepped inside the arc of the punch, caught the arm, and turned. It was not a fight. It was a piece of brutal, simple choreography, a twist, a transfer of momentum. Troy went to his knees, his face white with shock, his arm locked at an angle that was wrong but not broken. Only then did I see them. 3 other men dressed in identical dark suits and quiet professionalism had materialized from the crowd. They stood behind Troy's stunned entourage, cutting off any escape. They had not been there, and then they simply were. Troy's friends, who'd been laughing insults seconds before, took a sudden, collective, sober step back. Their bravado vanished into the salty air. I was shaking. The tremors started in my knees and raced up my spine, making my teeth chatter. "I'm sorry," I whispered, clutching the heavy coat tighter around me. "I'm so sorry. I dropped the mic. I broke the feed. I'm sorry." I was apologizing to the crowd, to the man, to the expensive, broken equipment. The cameras were still rolling. Guido Balestra saw the panic in my eyes. He stepped in front of me, putting his body between me and the lenses, his back to the stage. He was a solid wall of black wool, blocking me from the curious, hungry eyes of the crowd. He put one large, warm hand on the side of my head, a gesture that should have been terrifying but felt like the only solid thing in the world. He gently turned my face away from the lights, tucking me into the dark safety of his shoulder. "No one touches a person from Wave Nest tonight," he said. His voice was quiet, but it was aimed perfectly at the clip-on microphone I still wore on my shirt, broadcasting his declaration clearly across the entire festival. One of his men stepped forward and spoke quietly to the gasping, kneeling Troy. "You and your friends are leaving now." It was not a suggestion. They were escorted, not gently, out of the festival perimeter. The show was over. The crowd, sensing the apex of the danger had passed, slowly returned to their conversations. The music tentatively started up again, a thin veneer over the sudden violence. Guido kept his hand on the back of my neck, a firm, grounding pressure, guiding me away from my console and into the darkness of the backstage supply tent. The air inside smelled of canvas and ozone. Only when the tent flap fell, plunging us into near darkness, did he release me. He looked at my wrist, which I was cradling against my chest. "Let me see." I hesitated, then slowly extended my hand under the single dim work light. I could already see the angry red welts, the beginning of a deep purple bruise in the distinct shape of a thumb and 4 fingers. He did not grab me. His touch was incredibly light, his rough fingertips barely grazing the inflamed skin. Assessing the damage, it was a touch that did not take, a touch that only gathered information. "It's not broken," I stammered, my voice trembling. "I'll be fine. Thank you. I don't know why you—" I looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. My breath caught. I knew this face. Everyone on the docks knew this face, even if they pretended they did not. This was Guido Balestra, the head of the Rook Syndicate, the man who owned the shadows in the city. He was a ghost story, a rumor whispered over shipyard contracts and union disputes. And he was checking the pulse on my bruised wrist. "Why did you help me?" I asked. My voice was small, but in the quiet of the tent, it was loud. Guido Balestra finally met my eyes. His were the color of the harbor at midnight, just before the storm hits. He dropped his hand, letting the heavy wool coat settle on me. He shrugged, a minimal movement of his powerful shoulders. "Your sound saved one of my men once." I just stared, my mind failing to compute. "My sound, I just play music. I balance levels. I'm just a tech." He gave a small nod, as if I had just confirmed something essential for him. He turned to leave, pausing at the tent flap. "Stay off the air for a few days. Maisie Stewart, let the noise settle." He knew my name. I watched him disappear back into the night he commanded, swallowed by the noise he had so effortlessly tamed. I stood there, wrapped in a coat that was too big and smelled of power, breathing in the cold, sharp scent of the sea. He said my sound saved someone. As the neon sign from the Ferris wheel painted a fleeting line of red light across my face, I realized his words had not saved me. They had just opened a door, and I, the girl who lived for silence, had just been dragged into the center of the loudest, most dangerous story in all of Greyhaven. I did not go home. My small apartment above the laundromat would offer no comfort. My sanctuary was here, at Wavenest 92.7. I walked back from the festival, the 3 miles a blur of foggy streetlights and the distant cry of foghorns. Guido Balestra's wool coat was a heavy, warm armor on my shoulders. I entered the station. The night manager barely looking up as I passed, I made it to my booth, my safe, padded, silent room, and locked the thick, soundproof door. It was 3 a.m. I sat in my chair, the one molded perfectly to the shape of my back, and stared at the console. The only lights were the soft, hypnotic green and yellow glows from the LED meters. The silence in the booth was absolute, a computed, perfect vacuum. It was the sound of safety. But the silence now felt wrong. It felt loud. My wrist was a dull, pulsing ache, the skin a map of ugly purple and yellow. I ran my fingers over the bruise, the physical evidence that the chaos of the outside world had finally breached my walls. And the coat, it was still on my chair, radiating a scent of cold air, expensive tobacco, and something metallic. Power, it was an invasion. I needed to reclaim my space. I needed to understand what had happened. Work has always been my anchor. I pulled up the audio files from the festival. I had not just recorded the main broadcast feed, I had recorded the raw, isolated feeds from all 8 microphones on the stage. I was meticulous that way. I put on my best headphones, the $1,000 pair that could pick up a mouse breathing on a carpet. I bypassed the incident with Troy Halberd. I did not want to hear the microphone crash, or the feedback, or my own pathetic, whispered apologies. I went back further, to the start of the night, when the band was playing, and I was just a ghost at the board. I was monitoring the feed from the bass amplifier. It was muddy, as usual, a low, indistinct thumping that you felt more than you heard. My job was to filter it, to tighten it up so it did not bleed into the vocal mics. But tonight, listening in my perfect silent room, I heard something else. It was wrong. The musician was playing a simple 4/4 beat, but there was a ghost in the signal, a tiny, high-frequency click buried deep inside the low-frequency thump. It was asynchronous. It was not musical. It was intentional. My fingers, moving on their own, flew across the digital console. I soloed the bass track. I applied a steep high-cut filter, slicing away everything above 80 hertz, leaving only the deep, resonant mud. Then I applied an aggressive low-cut filter, killing everything below 60 hertz. I had just created a tiny, narrow window of sound, and in that window, the ghost lived. Click, click, tap, click, 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 tap. It was not Morse. Morse code is too clean, too obvious. This was a messy, localized code, a series of rhythmic taps. It was a signal. My heart rate accelerated. I felt a cold, clean rush of adrenaline, the kind I only get when I am solving a complex audio problem, how to isolate it. I duplicated the track. On the new track, I inverted the phase. This is an old studio trick. When you play two identical signals together, with one perfectly out of phase, they cancel each other out, resulting in silence. I nudged the timing of the duplicate track, shifting it forward by just 2 milliseconds, matching it to the primary bass thump, but not the hidden click. I hit play. The musician's bass playing vanished. The deep, rolling thump was gone, canceled out by its own ghost. What remained was the click, now exposed, stark and terrifyingly clear. Tap, 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 tap. I ran it through a simple rhythmic decryption filter I had built years ago. Just as a hobby, the clicks translated into letters, and the letters formed words. Harbor Point Cold, Warehouse B12, tomorrow, Tenchi Ana. A chill, entirely separate from the cold night, snaked up my spine. This was a message, hidden in the public soundscape of the festival, broadcast to someone, somewhere, a dirty deal. And I, the shy sound tech, was the only person in the city who would have ever thought to dig it out. A slight shift in the air pressure of the room made the tiny hairs on my arms stand up. I ripped my headphones off. Guido Balestra was standing in the doorway of my booth. The heavy, soundproof door had not made a single sound. He had not knocked. He was just there. He was no longer in the expensive coat, just the black turtleneck. It made him look less like a gangster and more like a panther, all coiled muscle and absolute stillness. "You should lock your doors," he said. His voice was that same low-register rumble, a sound that my console would measure at under 50 hertz. I did," I stammered, my hand flying to the console, hitting the mute button, as if he could hear the tiny clicks from where he stood. The main door. "The night manager has a bad habit of leaving the bolt unlocked. I fixed it." He stepped inside, and my perfect silent room shrank by half. He looked at the complex waveform on my screen. "What did you find?" He had not asked if I found something. He asked what. My fear was warring with a strange, electric pride. He was in my world now. "You heard it," I whispered. "At the festival. The bass." It felt off, he said, like a badly grounded amp, a hum. "It wasn't a hum," I said, my voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. I pointed to the screen. "It was a signal. I isolated it. I had to phase invert the duplicate track to cancel the primary waveform." I watched him. His dark eyes scanned my screen, seeing the inverted lines, the narrow EQ cuts. His gaze was not blank. It was analytical. He was processing. He understood the complexity of what I had done. He was not surprised by the what, only by the how. He gave a single, small nod, a sign of professional respect. "Warehouse B12, Harbor Point Cold Storage," I said. He did not react. He just watched me. "At the festival," I said, my voice trembling again, "you said my sound saved one of your men. What did you mean?" Guido leaned against the soundproofed wall, his arms crossed. He was not a man who fidgeted. "3 months ago, you were doing your late-night ambient show, Midnight Waves." I nodded. "I remember. We had a technical error, a massive burst of white noise. It lasted almost 30 seconds. I thought I was going to be fired." It was not an error," Guido said, his voice flat, a statement of fact. "One of my men was pinned down in the old cannery. His communications were jammed. He was trapped. He had a handheld transmitter, and he knew your late-night signal was the cleanest, most powerful broadcast on the harbor. He pushed his emergency beacon directly onto your frequency." I stopped breathing. "To you," Guido continued. "It was static, a technical glitch. To my people, who were listening for him, it was a lifeline. Your broadcast pushed his signal over the jammers. It saved his life. We got his location because you were playing obscure music at 2 in the morning." I stared at my console, the machine I used to manage feedback and balance commercials. It had been used as a weapon, as a shield. "So you helped me," I whispered, finally understanding. "Tonight, it was a transaction." "We call it balancing the signal," he corrected, his voice softer. "You put a positive charge on the board. I paid it back." We're not even," I said, looking at the livid bruise on my wrist. "No," he agreed. "We are not." He pushed off the wall. "Troy Halberd is a spoiled child. The men behind him are not. You found their signal. You are now part of their noise." "I'm not a part of anything. I am just a tech." "You are the tech who heard what she should not have heard." He looked at the door of my apartment building in his mind. "I'm having the locks on your apartment changed. Tonight, one of my men will drive you home, and he will drive you here tomorrow. You will not walk." My first instinct, my entire being, screamed, "No, I'm not a protected woman. I'm not mafia property. I'm independent." "I don't need a babysitter," I said, my voice sharp. "I know." He gently, with one finger, tapped the edge of my bruised wrist. The light, simple contact sent a jolt of heat and pain straight to my shoulder. "But you will accept one, just until this signal is clean." I looked at that awful, violent mark. I thought of Troy's hot, whiskey-sour breath. I thought of the microphone crashing. I hated it, but I hated the memory of that fear more. I gave a single, tight nod. As if summoned, my email alert chimed in the quiet room. I turned to the screen. The email was from an organization I had never heard of, the Metropolitan Integrity Task Force, MITF. The subject line read, "Technical Support Request, Harbor Festival Incident." "Dear Miss, Maisie Stewart," I read aloud. "Maisie," Guido said, his voice hard. "They spelled my name wrong," I whispered. "Maisy, a sloppy, stupid mistake, the kind an insider makes when they are moving too fast." The email continued, politely requesting my expert assistance in analyzing signal interference from the festival. They wanted me to come to their office tomorrow, bringing all my raw recordings. "It is a trap," Guido stated. "They know someone was at the board. They suspect you heard something. They want to know what you heard." "What do I do?" "You do nothing. You do not reply. You do not open the email again. The Rook Syndicate will be at Warehouse B12 tomorrow. We will be there first. We will handle the interference." He turned and walked out of my studio. The thick door hissed shut, sealing me back inside. But my silence was gone. My sanctuary was breached. Guido wanted me to be silent. He wanted me to be protected. But he did not understand. I was not a victim to be shielded. I am a sound engineer. I went to my personal locker, hidden behind a panel of foam. I pulled out my old, worn-out field kit. Inside was my first professional microphone, a heavy, scratched, dynamic mic that had been with me for 10 years. It was my talisman. Guido could go to Warehouse B12. He could handle the interference. But I was going to listen. During my internship, I had helped install the public address system at Harbor Point, and, without authorization, I had run a secret, high-fidelity audio line from the main cold storage junction box. Piggybacking it on the city's old fiber optic network, it terminated at a junction box 3 blocks away from the warehouse. I was not going to be at the warehouse. I was going to be close enough. I grabbed my gear. I was not going to be a loose end. I was going to be a witness. I was the one who could hear the truth in the noise. My studio tonight was not the padded, warm booth at Wave Nest. My studio was a forgotten utility closet in a derelict building 3 blocks from Harbor Point Cold Storage. It smelled of rust, ozone, and the harbor's damp chill. I had my portable mixing board, my laptop, and my high-fidelity headphones jacked directly into the old fiber optic line I had installed as an intern. My secret bus. I was not just listening. My old access codes also gave me a feed from a single, grainy, wide-angle security camera on the corner of Warehouse B12. I had 2 senses in the game, the sharp, isolated audio from my hidden microphone line, and the blurry, night vision green image on my laptop. On my lap was a small, black box Guido had given me before I left the station. "If you hear anything else, press this," he had said. "Only once. It opens a secure channel for 5 seconds. A talkback." At 9:57, I heard the heavy, groaning thud of a container's locking mechanism. On the video feed, I saw 2 figures in dark clothing. Guido and one of his men melt from the shadows. They moved like technicians, not thugs, disabling the alarm system not by cutting wires, but by plugging a device into its port. At 10 o'clock, a truck arrived, but it was not the one they were expecting. It was a heavy, refrigerated unit, and the men who got out were not dock workers. They wore dark suits. Guido's team was already inside. I could hear their quiet, professional movements through my audio feed, the soft click of a server rack being unlocked, the whisper of gloved hands. "The manifest is digital," Guido's low voice came through my headphones, a sound so clear in the darkness it felt like he was next to me. "No cargo, just data." A different voice. His man. "Boss, this isn't merchandise. These are ledgers. North Atlantic Racketeering Division. NARD. What the hell is that?" "A ghost," Guido said. "A shell company to wash the city's private money." "They're coming," I whispered to myself. Watching the new arrivals on the video feed, they were walking toward the warehouse. "We are not taking it," Guido's voice continued, calm, precise. "We are balancing the sheet. Get the copy." I heard the high-speed whir of a data transfer. They were not robbing them. They were mirroring them, taking a snapshot of the entire illegal operation, downloading it onto a device I assumed was a cold storage wallet. "Data is power, Leo," Guido said, "and these people are about to aim their power at civilians. We just took their finger off the trigger." And that is when I heard it. It was not on the video. It was in my ears. A ping. It was tiny, high frequency, and it did not belong. It was the sound of a laser rangefinder, a single, precise pulse of light and sound, hitting a target. It was followed by the faintest snick of a rifle's safety being disengaged. My eyes flew to the grainy camera feed. The men on the ground were all accounted for. The sound was coming from above. I scanned the edges of the video, my heart slamming against my ribs, high up, on the gantry crane that spanned the entire shipping yard. I saw a flicker of movement, 2 men. A long, dark shape, a sniper's nest. They were not there for Guido. They were waiting for the NARD truck. They were setting a trap. Guido had not just walked into a meeting, he had walked into a double cross. My hand slammed down on the black comms box. I did not scream. I spoke, my voice low and urgent, the way I would to a host who was speaking too close to the mic. High-gain audio. "Gantry, 200 feet, east. You have a sniper team on the crane. Hi." I let go. The channel snapped shut. In my headphones, I heard Guido say one word. "Out." It was a command that moved the world. "Leo, the bug, now." I heard a small click, a scrape of metal on metal, Guido's man planting their locust inside a cable conduit. Then a new sound, deafening and deliberate, a high-pitched, piercing beep, beep, beep. Guido had triggered the backup alarm on a massive container forklift. It was not random noise, it was a wall of sound. He was creating audio cover, a blast of white noise to mask their footsteps, to confuse the sniper's sensitive listening gear. "Move!" he yelled, his voice barely audible over the shriek he had unleashed. The front doors of the warehouse burst open, but it was not the Nard men from the truck. It was a third group. And at their lead, his face lit by the flashing yellow light of the forklift, was Troy Halberd. He was wearing a jacket with USC Inspector emblazoned on the back. His face was a mask of furious, self-important rage. He was not here for a dirty deal. He was here to prove he was in charge. "Fan out!" Troy shouted to his fake inspectors. "They're in here, I know it." Guido and his man were shadows, moving behind a stack of shipping pallets, making for a side exit. They were almost clear. And then Troy Halberd, that arrogant, stupid man, looked up. He was not looking for a person. He was scanning for technology. His eyes passed over the security camera. My camera, the one I was using. He stared right at it. "There!" he screamed, pointing. "That camera! They're watching us! Take it out! Take it out now!" One of his men raised a handgun, aiming it at the lens. "No," I whispered, my feet about to go dark. But Guido saw it. He was 20 yards away. He did not yell. He did not hesitate. He lunged for a massive, rolled-up blue tarpaulin hanging from a rafter. He grabbed the release rope. The gun fired. The heavy tarp, weighing hundreds of pounds, fell like a theater curtain, a massive wall of vinyl and dust, dropping directly in front of the camera. The gunshot was followed by the thwack of the bullet burying itself in the heavy material. My video feed went black, replaced by a solid, useless blue. But my audio was still live. I heard shouting, confusion, and then another gunshot, this one from a different weapon, a rifle. The sniper on the crane. He was firing blind into the chaos. I heard a sound I will never, ever forget, a high-velocity zing, followed by the catastrophic, deafening clang of a bullet striking a thick, tempered steel plate. It was a sound that vibrated through the microphone, through the wire, and into my skull. My heart did not just skip, it stopped. I was blind, listening to a gunfight, my imagination painting a picture of metal and blood. I heard a final shout, the whoosh of a metal door sliding shut, and then nothing but the incessant, idiotic beep, beep, beep of the forklift alarm, and underneath it all, the distant, mournful call of a container ship leaving the harbor. The line was quiet for 5 minutes. 10. I was frozen, my hands shaking so hard I could not unjack the headphones. My personal cell phone, the one I had not looked at in hours, buzzed on the table. The screen showed an unknown, blocked number. I answered, my fingers numb. Maisie. Guido's voice. It was not the smooth, gravelly rumble from before. It was rough, strained, and he was breathing hard. Are you okay?" I whispered. "I heard—" "I'm fine," he lied. "A graze. Your signal path saved us. A second time." I leaned my head against the cold, damp concrete of the utility closet, the relief so profound it felt like a sickness. I heard the shot, the one on the metal. I thought— "A forklift," he said, cutting me off. "It was in the way. We're clear." "Guido," I said, and the words just tumbled out. A protest from the part of me that still existed before last night. I'm a sound tech. I don't want to be a tool for this, for violence, for any of this. There was a long, static-filled pause. I heard him take a sharp, painful breath. He was hiding more than a graze. "Maisie," he said, his voice dropping, becoming intensely personal, an audio signal meant only for me. "These men, Halberd, Nard, they push people into holes. They bury them with debt, with laws, with fear. Tonight, you did not push anyone in." He paused, and I heard the distant wail of police sirens. Finally arriving. Much too late. "You're pulling people out. Maisie, you're pulling them out of the dark. Starting with me." The line went dead. I sat in the darkness, the only light coming from my laptop's dead blue screen. The harbor outside was dark, the warehouse lights extinguished, but the sound of that ship's horn, a low, resonant C-sharp, kept rolling across the water, sounding like a promise that had been made but not yet spoken, a vow. The storm broke over Greyhaven not like a wave, but like a judgment. It struck the coast at 9 p.m., a physical wall of wind and ice-cold rain. The city's power grid, old and overburdened, tore itself apart. My neighborhood, along with half the harbor, was plunged into a sudden, primitive darkness. The wind did not howl, it shrieked, a high-frequency overload that made the windows of my small apartment rattle in their frames. I was stranded. My phone was dying, and the building was already cold. I did not know how he found me. I never heard a car, and the streets below were black, running rivers. But at 10 p.m., there was a heavy, solid knock on my door, not a please, a summons. It was one of his men, the quiet one I recognized from the festival. He held a high-powered flashlight that cut a perfect white cone in my dark hallway. "The boss says you're not staying here," he said. I did not argue. I grabbed my bag, the one still containing my audio kit. I was not taken to a safe house. Not in the way I imagined. The Blackfin Hotel was the tallest shadow on the skyline, a dark spear of glass and steel that the Rook Syndicate called home. We bypassed the lobby, taking a private service elevator that smelled of steel and ozone. We went all the way up. The elevator opened onto a heavy, insulated fire door. The man unlocked it, and we stepped out of the howling wind and into a sudden, impossible silence. We were on the roof, but we were inside. It was a massive greenhouse, a cathedral of reinforced glass spanning the entire top floor. Outside, the storm was a roaring, visible monster, the wind and rain lashing against the glass. But in here, it was warm, still, and green. The only light came from strings of heavy-duty, battery-powered lanterns, casting a soft, golden glow over rows and rows of plants. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, humidity, and herbs. Guido was waiting for me. He was sitting on a simple wooden bench, surrounded by tall, fragrant basil plants and tomato vines heavy with fruit. He was still in the black turtleneck from the warehouse, but his left side was dark and wet in a way the rain could not account for. He had lied to me on the phone. It was not a graze. "You're hurt," I said. My voice was flat, the observation obvious. "It is a cut," he said. His voice was strained, tighter than I had ever heard it. He was guarding the pain. A fully stocked metal first aid kit sat open on the bench beside him. He had been trying, and failing, to reach the wound on his own back shoulder. "You can't stitch that yourself," I said. I dropped my bag. My paralysis was gone, replaced by a sudden, cold clarity. I walked to the kit, my fingers identifying the antiseptic wipes, the butterfly closures, the sterile gauze, the tape. This was just another kind of signal chain, a problem to be fixed. "Take it off," I said. He actually paused. He looked at me, this man who commanded the city's shadows, and I saw the briefest flicker of surprise. I had given him an order. With a sharp hiss of pain, he gripped the hem of the turtleneck and pulled it over his head. The wound was raw and ugly, a deep, torn gash high on his left shoulder blade, where a piece of metal shrapnel from the forklift had ripped through the skin. It was still bleeding sluggishly. I sat down next to him on the bench, close enough that our knees almost touched. "This is going to sting." "I am aware." My fingers, which I expected to be shaking, were rock steady. I took the antiseptic wipe and pressed it firmly against the wound. He did not make a sound, but I saw every muscle in his neck and his good arm seize. Turning to iron, I cleaned the blood away, my touch clinical and precise. The sharp, chemical smell of the antiseptic cut through the warm, green scent of the basil. I worked in silence, focusing on the task. I was cleaning up his violence, but as my fingers brushed his skin, which was hot and alive, I realized the dynamic in the room had shifted. In this glass box, suspended above the storm, I was not the one in need of rescue. I applied the butterfly bandages one by one, my touch gentle but firm, pulling the torn edges of his skin together. I laid a thick gauze pad over the top and began to tape it down. My arm brushed against his bare chest, and I felt the solid wall of muscle, the heat radiating from him. When I was finished, my hand lingered for just a second on the clean, white bandage. I sat back. "It needs a doctor." "It will heal," he said, moving his shoulder, testing the pull of the tape. We sat in silence for a long time. The only sound was the roar of the storm on the glass ceiling, a perfect, chaotic, powerful white noise. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice low. "You should have told me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "It was not your concern." "It was my camera," I countered. "You took that shrapnel protecting my feed." He turned to look at me, his dark eyes catching the lantern light. "I took the shrapnel protecting my escape. The tarp was the escape." I did not believe him, but I nodded. My eyes drifted to the corner of the greenhouse, where an old, scarred upright piano stood, half hidden by a sprawling fig tree. "Do you play?" I asked. I needed to change the frequency, to move away from the blood. He looked at the piano, and a shadow I could not name crossed his face. "I used to, a long time ago." "Where?" "A bar. The Blue Kestrel. It is just a parking garage now. It had a piano, 3 tables, and a leaky ceiling. I played jazz, standards, anything to keep the glasses full and the owner off my back." I tried to form the image in my mind, this man, this creature of absolute, dangerous control, his powerful hands moving over ivory keys, playing for tips. "What happened?" I asked. "The Kestrel burned," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The owner owed the wrong people. I decided that night I would rather be the one who owns the debt than the one who burns." It was a chillingly simple origin story, a life redirected by a single fire. "I used to listen," I offered, my own confession into the storm. "My whole childhood, my mother was a seamstress, and our apartment was tiny. Her sewing machine was always running, this constant, driving thrum, thrum, thrum. I learned to be quiet. I learned to live in the small, silent spaces between the noise. I guess that is why I am so good at sound. I spent the first 18 years of my life just listening." He looked at me then, really looked at me, as if he were isolating my frequency for the first time. "A lifetime of listening," he murmured. The storm outside hit a new crescendo, a violent blast of wind that made the entire greenhouse groan. I flinched, a small, involuntary shudder. Guido did not move, except for his hand. He lifted it slowly, a clear, deliberate motion. He did not touch me. He held his hand an inch from my face, his palm open, his fingers slightly curved. It was a question, an offering. He was asking for permission. My heart, which had been racing with the storm, suddenly settled into a heavy, slow kick drum in my chest. I leaned forward just that single inch and pressed my cheek into the rough, warm palm of his hand. I closed my eyes. His thumb moved, a slow, gentle stroke across my cheekbone, the tension that had been coiled in my spine since the festival, since the warehouse, began to unravel. He leaned in. I felt the heat of his breath before I felt his lips. He whispered against my skin, his voice a vibration. "Is this okay?" I could not find my voice. I just nodded, a small, tight movement against his hand. He did not kiss me. Not yet. He wrapped his good arm around my waist, pulling me from the bench and into him. He reached for a thick wool blanket folded nearby, and in one fluid motion, he stood, pulling me with him. He wrapped the blanket around both of us, cocooning us in warmth and shadow, separating us from the world. We stood in the center of the greenhouse, surrounded by the scent of basil and raging rain, wrapped in dark wool. Then he kissed me. It was not the desperate, crashing kiss of a storm. It was slow, deep, and methodical. It was a kiss of exploration, a question and an answer all at once. His lips were firm and warm, and he tasted faintly of the whiskey he must have taken for the pain. My hands, which had been trapped between us, found their way up, my fingers tangling in his thick, dark hair. He deepened the kiss, a low sound rumbling in his chest, and I felt the heat of it flood my entire body. His hand moved from my waist to my back, pressing me closer, and I could feel the solid, undeniable strength of his chest against mine, his skin still bare. His breath was hot on my collarbone as he moved his lips from my mouth to my jaw, tracing a line down my throat. It was overwhelming. The smell of the rain, the heat of his body, the absolute safety and the profound danger I felt all at once. I tensed, just a small, instinctive tightening of my shoulders. He stopped. Instantly, he pulled back, just enough to look at me. Though his arm never loosened, his eyes were dark, searching my face. He was not angry. He was checking the levels. "You lead the pace," he whispered, his voice rough. "Maisie, you tell me the tempo. You tell me when to stop. Always." He was giving me the fader. He was giving me control. My fear vanished, replaced by a sudden, aching wave of want. This man, who commanded a city's underworld, was yielding the floor to me. I raised my hand, the one that was not in his hair, and placed it flat on his bare chest. I felt the steady, powerful thump-thump of his heart under my palm. It was the most honest sound I had ever heard. "I want this," I said, my voice clear and sure in the quiet. His answering kiss was all-consuming. It was a long, slow melt, a perfect harmony of movement and breath. We sank down onto a pile of thick canvas cushions near the piano, never breaking the embrace, tangled in the wool blanket. His hands moved, undoing the first 2 buttons of my flannel shirt, not to remove it, but just to feel the skin beneath. His calloused fingers were impossible to ignore. He said, "No, you're not. You are your own." He reached up and tapped my ear, the one that had heard the signal, the one that had saved him. "I am just watching the levels." The morning after the storm, the sun rose on a city that had already judged me. The peace we had found in the greenhouse, that fragile, rain-washed silence, was shattered by the 6 o'clock news. The North Key Gazette, a gossip rag with political teeth, had gone viral. Their headline, "Waveness Tech Rescued by Harbor Kingpin, from Sound Booth to Penthouse." The video was a masterpiece of malice. It started with footage from the festival, expertly cutting between my terrified face and Guido's arrival. They used the shot of him placing his coat on me, but they slowed it down, added a soft focus filter, and laid a trashy, romantic saxophone track underneath. They had security footage grainy, but clear of me getting into his man's car after the warehouse incident. But the centerpiece was a 10-second clip, clearly filmed with a long lens from an opposing building, showing the greenhouse. It was dark, a silhouette against the storm. But it was undeniably me. And undeniably Guido. They had caught the moment he pulled me to my feet, the moment he wrapped the blanket around us. The video ended with our 2 dark shapes merging into one, then cut to black with the question, "How high does the Rook Syndicate's influence go?" I was not a victim. I was a social climber. I was not a witness. I was a co-conspirator. "It is a deep fake," I whispered, staring at the phone screen. "No," Guido said. He was standing by the glass, now clear and rain-washed, looking down at the city. He had a fresh shirt on, the bandage a stark white lump beneath it. "It is just a lie. A deep fake uses technology to fake the video. They just used a camera and a headline to fake the meaning. They are simpler and more effective." The official attacks began an hour later. The first was an email from the Urban Safety Commission, a formal notice. "Miss Maisie Stewart is hereby under investigation for the deliberate disruption of a community event, destruction of city-leased equipment, and suspected collusion with known criminal elements." It was signed by a deputy, but the invisible ink spelled out Troy Halberd. It was his father's signature, wielded like a club. The second email was from my fake friend at the Metropolitan Integrity Task Force. The tone was no longer polite. Maisie, your failure to cooperate has been noted. We have an open file on your activities. We strongly suggest you present yourself and your recordings at our office by 5 p.m. today, or we will be forced to escalate. They were building a cage. They were painting me into a corner where my only options were to be a criminal or a victim. Guido put down his coffee cup. You cannot stay here. You cannot stay in the city. I have a place in the mountains, 3 hours north. No one knows it exists. Leo will drive you. You will be safe there until I clean this. I looked at him, at the man who had pulled me from the storm, who had given me control. He was taking it back. For my own good. No, I said, this is not a negotiation. Maisie, Halbert, and Nard are not children. They are not fighting over a microphone. They are fighting for a multi-million-dollar laundering operation. You are a loose end. They will not send Troy next time. They will send a professional. I am not a loose end, I said, my voice quiet but as hard as the console I built my life on. I am the one who heard the signal, and I am not running. I walked over to him, forcing him to look at me. Do you know what this is? I held up my phone, showing the Gazette video. This is noise. It is just a different kind of static. It is a badly mixed track, and I am the best sound engineer in this city. I looked at the USC email. This is a threat. I looked at the MITF email. This is a lie. I turned back to him. If I run, they win. They control the narrative. I become the mobster's runaway girl. The story they are telling becomes the truth. I will not let them do that. I will not let them silence me. Guido watched me, his face unreadable, his eyes analytical. He was calculating, processing my defiance. So you will stay, and you will be a target. I will stay, I corrected him, and I will be a broadcaster. I had his attention. They are attacking me with a narrative, Zus, I said, my mind finally clicking into place, the solution presenting itself like a perfect, clean waveform. I am going to attack them with the truth. I am going to do a special broadcast on Wave Nest, not about you, not about Nard, not about the warehouse, not yet. I am going to do a show about sound. I am going to teach the entire city how to spot a lie. I will play them the Gazette audio and show them, live on air, how the saxophone track is mixed higher than my own ambient sound, designed to trigger an emotional, not a factual, response. I will show them how to identify an audio cut, a deep-faked voice, a manipulated signal. I am going to give the city a new set of ears. I am going to fight their noise with clarity. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of Guido's mouth. The panther was seeing a new kind of hunt. You will be a target, Mar, he repeated, but this time you will be a target sitting in a glass box, in a public building, with a microphone in your hand. Yes. Good, he said. Then we give them a show. He turned to his phone. I will have my protection in place. No, I said, stopping him. No visible men. No suits in the lobby. Guido. No black sedans parked at the curb. That just proves their story. It makes me your property. He paused, his thumb hovering over the screen. Invisible, I said. If I am to do this, I must do it as Maisie Stewart of Wave Nest, not as the Rook's woman. You have to give me that. He looked at me for a long, hard moment, and I knew this was a bigger concession for him than the greenhouse. He was agreeing to let me be in danger, to trust my method over his. Invisible, he agreed, his voice tight. I went to the station an hour later. The man who drove me was not Leo. He wore a rumpled Greyhaven courier uniform, and his car was a beaten-up gray sedan. He dropped me a block away. As I walked toward the station, a Harbor Electric van was parked by the curb, 2 men in hard hats working on a junction box. A food delivery guy on a bicycle nodded at me as he passed. Guido's invisible protection, an entire network of ghosts, hiding in plain sight. I walked into the office of my station manager, a man named Henderson, who looked like he lived on stale coffee and antacids. Maisie, he sighed, not looking up. The board is screaming. The USC is threatening to review our broadcast license. The Gazette is... Well, you saw it. What do you have to say for yourself?" "I'm innocent," Marai said. "That does not matter," he snapped. "You are toxic." "I can fix it," I said. "Give me 1 hour. Prime time. Tonight, 8 o'clock. I am doing a special report. The Sound of Truth. How to Listen in a City of Noise." He stared at me. "You want me to give my primetime slot to the woman who is currently at the center of the biggest scandal in the city? To talk about audio filters? Are you insane?" "I am the only one who can do this," I said, leaning on his desk. "Your ratings are in the toilet. This scandal is the only thing people are talking about. You can either be the station that fired me, or you can be the station that let me speak. I will not mention the Rook Syndicate. I will not mention the warehouse. I will give you a compelling, technical, brilliant hour of radio that will teach our listeners how to protect themselves from misinformation. It is your mission. Henderson Community. Knowledge. Truth." He scrubbed his face with his hands. "You are putting me in an impossible position." "I'm giving you an exclusive?" He was quiet for 30 long seconds. 1 hour. And you stick to the script. No politics, no names. You talk about technology. You mention Nard. You mention Troy. You mention him by name. And I will cut your feed. I will cut it and you will be done. We are not a battlefield. Maisie, do you understand? "I understand," I said. "I am not a weapon." I went back to my booth, the one place I felt whole, and began to build my show. At 4 p.m., as I was lining up audio clips, a new message pinged into the station's secure digital tip box. It was an audio file, encrypted. I ran it through my decryption software. It was a single, 30-second clip, a distorted, synthesized voice, like a first-generation speech bot. It said, "The USC does not just get donations, it gets security tithes. The Nard ledger you heard is not just a ledger, it is a payment schedule. Check the disbursements from the Harbor Safety Community Fund, the same fund Troy Halberd uses for his parties." The file deleted itself the moment it finished playing. At the bottom of the now blank message, there was a single digital signature, one word. "Kite." My blood went cold. They knew I had heard the ledger. I had it, the link, the how and the why, Nard, the USC, Troy. It was all one big, dirty signal chain. I wanted to run to the microphone. I wanted to tear up my script about audio filters and just play this. I wanted to burn them all down, right now, with the truth. My phone buzzed, a text from Guido, one word. Invisible. He was reminding me. He was listening. I looked at the file on my screen. I had promised Henderson I would not be a weapon. I had promised Guido I would not be a target. But my heart, for the first time in my life, wanted to be loud. It wanted justice to ring out like a feedback howl, not whisper like a hidden signal. Guido's method was the slow, patient game, the long con, the knife in the dark. My method was clarity, the light. I looked at the clock. 7:59. I had 1 minute until I was live. I took the file from Kite. I did not delete it. I did not schedule it for air. I moved it to a secure, encrypted folder on my personal drive. I put the weapon away. Guido was right. Not yet. A final killing blow had to be perfectly timed. You only get one shot. I put on my headphones, my hand steady on the fader. "Good evening. Greyhaven," I said, my voice smooth and clear as the broadcast light turned red. "My name is Maisie Stewart, and tonight we are going to talk about listening." My broadcast worked. The sound of truth had given the people of Greyhaven a new vocabulary. They were listening. But the show had also been a declaration of war. I had not just taught the city how to hear lies. I had taught Nard and the USC exactly what I was capable of. I was no longer just a person of interest. I was a known threat. Guido's invisible protection was suffocating. The electricians were always on my street. The couriers always seemed to be delivering packages to my neighbors. They were watching me. But I knew, with a technician's certainty, that they were also listening. If they were listening, they were using professional gear, and professional gear has professional weaknesses. "They have a tail on you," Guido said. We were in the greenhouse, the only safe place. The glass walls still streaked with salt from the storm. A white utility van. It parks 3 blocks away, always, but it has a line of sight to your apartment. They are using a high-gain parabolic microphone. "I know," I said. "I can feel the signal. I want to meet them." Guido's entire body tensed. "You will do no such thing." "I am going to plan a trap," I said, pulling my audio kit onto the workbench. "Not for you. For them. I am tired of being the prey. We are going to hunt the hunter, Guido, and we are going to use my rules." I pulled out a small, gray box, a signal generator. "This is a frequency sweep. I am going to plant it in the old container yard on Dock Street. I will go there tomorrow under the guise of scouting locations for an ambient sound broadcast." "It is too dangerous." "Listen to me," I insisted. "The trap is not physical. It is auditory. When I trigger this, it will emit a 2-second burst, a piercing 18,000 hertz tone, followed by a 19,000 hertz tone. To you, to me, it is just a faint ee. But to a man in a van wearing high-gain, amplified surveillance headphones, it will be an ice pick in his eardrum," Guido finished, a dark glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "Exactly. And what does a professional do when his audio peaks? He does not rip his headphones off. He does not scream. He instinctively, instantly, ducks the gain. He turns the volume down." I looked at him. My plan laid bare. "Your team will be watching the radio frequencies, not for the sound, but for the reaction to the sound. The moment that van's RF signal signature dips, that is our man." The container yard was a graveyard of rust and steel. I walked through it, my footsteps echoing, my portable recorder out as if I were capturing the industrial soundscape. I found a hollow I-beam, slipped the small gray box inside, and aimed its transmitter toward the street. Guido was where I could not see him, but I knew he was there. I went back to my apartment. We waited. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. "White, Dock Street." The white van had taken the bait. It was parked 200 yards from the yard, exactly where a good audio technician would park for a clean signal. I opened my laptop. I was remotely connected to the signal generator. My finger hovered over the activate button. I texted Guido. "Ready." He replied 1 minute later. "We are watching the wave. Hit it." I clicked the mouse. 3 blocks away, inside a dark, soundproofed van, a man in headphones suddenly, violently, slammed his hand onto his receiver, cranking the attenuation knob. Gus AC, the Urban Safety Commission's Keystone building. I felt the blood drain from my face. My fake MITF contact, the USC, Troy Halbert's father, Nard, they were all in the same group chat. "It is a shell," Guido said, his voice cold. "The MITF does not exist. It is just a desk in their lobby. A ghost, a lure for people like you." He tossed the phone on my desk. "I am going to pay them a visit." "No," I said, my voice sharp. "Maisie, this is not a request. They put your picture in a chat room. They put a target on your back. And you will not fix it by breaking down their door. Guido, that is what they do." He was already heading for the door, the coiled violence in him ready to spring. "They have plans of your studio. Maisie, they know where you live." "And I know where they live," I yelled, my voice stopping him. He turned, his face a mask of controlled fury. I pointed to the schematic. "This is not just a building, it is a machine, and I can hear it." I had pulled the surveillance files from the operative's laptop. I hit play on one. The sound of footsteps. "Listen," I commanded. "Hard soles, tiled floor. That is the lobby. Standard." I clicked to another track. "Soft soles, carpet, upper floor, offices." I clicked to a third track. The sound was different, tighter, tap, tap, tap. "What do you hear?" I asked him. "Footsteps," he said, impatient. "No, listen, the reverberation, the echo. It is minimal. The ceiling is low and concrete, but the footstep itself, there is a boom to it. I ran it through my analyzer, a low-frequency resonance. It is a raised floor. Like a server room, it is a vault, soundproofed, reinforced on the ground floor. It is not a data archive. It is a command center. It is the NARD hub, Guido, right inside the USC. He looked at me, his anger being replaced by a cold, calculating respect. Good, tonight. We hit the vault. We take the servers. No, I said, standing up. We are done with that. We are done with warehouse raids and back alley phone grabs. I am not a criminal, and I am not going to let you be one for me. This is my world, Maisie. This is how I balance the books. Not this time. I took a deep breath. We're going to use the real rules. We are going to the Office of Civic Redress. Guido actually laughed, a short, harsh sound. The OCR, they are mice. Maisie, they have no teeth. They are the only ones in the city who are not on the NARD payroll. I countered. They are clean, and they are all we have. I am going to walk in there tomorrow. I am going to give them the data from the warehouse, the USC Ops chat logs, the kite file, and my analysis of this audio. I am giving them a prosecutable case, gift-wrapped. And they will bury it, Guido said, shaking his head. By noon, that file will be lost, and you will be in a ditch. That is how this city works. Then I will make a kill switch, I said. They will agree to take the case in secret. In exchange, I will record a formal, technical affidavit, a piece of testimony so compelling, so clear that it cannot be argued, and I will keep a copy. If they drop the case, or if anything happens to me, that recording goes to every news outlet in the country. It is called mutual assurance. He was silent for a full minute, just staring at me. He was seeing the woman from the greenhouse, the one who had taken control, fully emerge. You are handing them a loaded gun, Maisie, and you are handing it to a child. I'm turning on a light, I said. He sighed, the fight going out of him, replaced by a weary resignation. He knew I would not bend. You go to the OCR. You give them your data. You record your switch. Thank you, I whispered. But I will be there, he said, his voice suddenly iron. My team will not be in vans. They will be in the building, on every floor, in the stairwells, if that child so much as flinches, if they try to hold you, if they try to lose you. I will pull the fire alarm, and I will walk you out of that building myself. I will choose the escape route. I nodded. It was a compromise we could both live with. That night, the greenhouse was quiet. He was at the window, looking down at the Keystone building, planning his invisible siege. I walked up behind him. He had taken his jacket off, and I saw the bandage on his shoulder. It was new. The wound from the warehouse was healing, but the scar would be permanent. I reached out, my fingers tracing the edge of the white gauze through his shirt. Do not choose bullets, I whispered, my hand flat against the scar, when you can choose evidence. He turned, his own hand covering mine, pressing it against him. I will always, he said, his voice low and final. Choose the escape route. The tension in the room was electric. The coming battle hung over us. I needed to ground myself. I needed to remember what was real. I went to my bag and pulled out my smallest, most sensitive microphone, a condenser mic designed to record the sound of an ant walking. I walked back to him. He watched me, his expression unreadable. What is this? He asked. Silence, I said. I unbuttoned the top button of his shirt and, with a clinical steadiness, placed the small, cold metal microphone directly on his chest, over his heart. I put on my headphones and hit record. I closed my eyes. The sound that filled my head was not the storm, not the city, not the gunfire. It was just this thump, 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 thump. It was the steadiest, lowest, most powerful signal I had ever heard. It was the sound of the man standing in front of me. It was solid. It was real. It was the rhythm of my new, terrifying life. I stood there for a full minute, just listening to him live. I opened my eyes. He had not moved. He had just watched me. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. I labeled it Rook. Rest. The Office of Civic Redress was a house of cards. I knew it. Guido knew it, and Nard certainly knew it. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I received a frantic, encrypted call from my contact at the OCR. "They are gone," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. "The files, all of it. They pushed a mandatory maintenance update at 4 this morning. It was not maintenance. Maisie. It was a Trojan. It wiped the servers clean." "The hard copy," I said, my blood running cold. "The copy I gave you." "Melted," she said. "The Trojan activated the server room's fire suppression system, not the CO2, the chemical one. It was designed to corrode drives. The data is soup. It is all gone." I was standing in the Wavenest studio, my hand gripping the console. I looked at Guido, who was leaning against the soundproofed wall, his face a mask of stone. He had heard. His expression said, "I told you so." "It is not gone," I said, my voice quiet, my mind already racing. "They think the file is a document, but it is not. It is sound." Guido raised an eyebrow. "They wiped the OCR. They did not wipe me." I turned to my main broadcast terminal. The OCR was Plan A. Plan B was my fortress. "Do you know the Rust radio network?" I asked Guido. "The college stations, the pirate broadcasts, the community signals in the suburbs, they are just static." "They are my radio cloud," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "I have back-end access to 14 of them. They are all linked by an old, forgotten audio protocol. They think they destroyed the data. I just distributed it. I took the master file, the NARD ledger, the chat logs, my audio evidence, and I ran it through my own algorithm. The program sliced the massive data file into thousands of tiny, 1-second pieces. Then it encoded those pieces as inaudible, high-frequency signals. I embedded them one by one into the audio files of hundreds of indie label songs. I uploaded the doctored tracks to the automated playlists of all 14 Rust radio stations. "The data is no longer in one place," I explained, the progress bar on my screen filling up. "It is everywhere. It is hidden in the silence between guitar strums, in the reverb of a snare drum, in the static of a late-night broadcast. It is a ghost, spread across the entire city's airwaves." "And how do you reassemble it?" Guido asked, impressed. "Only I have the key," I said, "a decryption algorithm that knows which songs to listen to, in what order, and at what frequency. I am the only one who can make the ghost whole." The upload finished. The files were safe. They were hidden in plain sight, broadcast to thousands of listeners who had no idea they were hearing the city's biggest secret. The victory lasted for exactly 3 hours. My station manager, Henderson, was supposed to meet me at noon. He never showed. At 3 o'clock, my private phone rang. It was Henderson's number, but it was not his voice. "Maisie," the voice sneered. It was Troy Halberd. He sounded drunk, or high, or both. He sounded desperate. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice flat. "Your boss is fine. He's just looking at the harbor from a new perspective. Specifically, from the Mayor's Spine Bridge." My stomach turned to ice. Mayor's Spine was the oldest, highest, most isolated iron bridge in Greyhaven. "She is on the line. Troy," I heard Henderson's voice, thin and terrified. "Just tell her what you want." "I want the key, you little sound bitch," Troy spat. "My father is ruined. They are canceling contracts. The NARD accounts are frozen. Because of you and your audio file. I want the key that reassembles it, and I want the master copy. You will bring it to me, Mayor's Spine Bridge, 3 in the morning. Just you." "Or what?" "Or I will teach your boss how to fly," he said, and I heard the unmistakable metallic click of a handgun's hammer being pulled back. "You have until 3. The line went dead. I looked at Guido. He was already checking the clip on his own weapon. "No," he said. "I have to go." I said, "Leo will go. My best man, he will pose as you." "He does not have the key. Guido, the key is in my head, and he cannot broadcast." "Broadcast," he He stopped, staring at me. I am not going there to give him the key. Guido, I am going there to end this. This is my voice. This is my fight. I have to be the one to carry it. He will kill you, Maisie, Guido said, his voice a low, brutal growl. He stepped in front of me, his large hands gripping my shoulders. It was not a gentle hold. It was an anchor. I will not let you. He is expecting a victim, I said, meeting his dark eyes. He's expecting the girl from the festival. He's not going to get her. This is not your world. Guido, this is not a warehouse. This is a broadcast, and I am the producer. I saw the war in his eyes, the protector versus the tactician. He knew I was right. Then we compromise, he said, his voice rough. He released my shoulders and went to his bag. He pulled out something small. It looked like an expensive, minimalist lapel pin. This is a military-grade microphone. It has a 5-mile transmitter. You will wear it under your collar. It will be live. It will stream directly to a receiver in Leo's van. The second your audio peaks, the second I hear his hand on you, we are moving in. Not just to Leo's van, I said, taking the pin. We are streaming this to the Rust Radio Network. We are streaming it live to all 14 stations. Guido's face was pale. You are turning yourself into a live target. I'm turning myself into a witness, I said, with thousands of ears. At 2:55 in the morning, the mayor's spine bridge was a skeleton of cold iron. Whistling in the wind, the river was a black, churning void 100 feet below. I walked alone, the wind tearing at my jacket, the tiny microphone pin cold against my skin. Troy was there, just as he said. He was leaning against a girder, Henderson pale and shaking beside him. Troy was holding a gun, and it was not pointed at Henderson. It was pointed at me. "Give it to me!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. The wind whipped his words away. "Let him go first," I said, my voice steady. I had my hand in my pocket, on the small, modified phone that controlled the stream. "You are not in charge here," he screamed. He lunged, grabbing me, shoving me hard against the icy steel railing. His other hand, the one not holding the gun, clamped down on my arm, his fingers digging into the muscle. It was the festival all over again, the hot, arrogant grip, the smell of whiskey, the feeling of being trapped. But I was not the girl from the festival. He pressed the gun to my temple. "The key now!" I did not look at him. I looked past him, at the dark city. I kept my voice perfectly level, a broadcaster's calm. "I am live," I said. "What?" he hissed. My thumb pressed the Go Live button on the phone in my pocket. The signal was instantly piped to all 14 stations. "Hello, Greyhaven," I said, my voice cutting through the wind, amplified to thousands of listeners. "My name is Maisie Stewart. I am live from the Mayor's Spine Bridge. With me is Troy Halberd, son of the USC commissioner." Troy's face went white. He stared at me, his grip frozen. "I have a question for you. Troy," I said, my voice clear and cold. "A question for all of Greyhaven. Why does an urban safety commissioner need to erase the financial records of the North Atlantic Racketeering Division? Across the city, in dorm rooms, in late-night diners, in lonely apartments, listeners started recording. The chat rooms for the pirate stations exploded. Troy, in a blind panic, raised his gun. "Shut it off! Shut it off!" I did not flinch. I just looked at him. And then I heard it, just as Guido said I would, the low, mournful horn of the 305 freight train, followed by the deafening, metallic squeal of its brakes as it approached the crossing half a mile away. The perfect audio cover. My left hand, which was gripping the railing, tapped 3 times, tap, 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 my signal. "You are finished, Troy," I said. "I will shoot you," he screamed, his hand shaking. He pointed the gun away from me and fired it into the black sky, a stupid, useless burst of noise. "I will do it." "No, you will not," Guido's voice said, appearing from the darkness behind him. Before Troy could even turn, Guido was on him. It was not a fight. It was a symphony of violence. Guido did not hit him. He moved like a shadow, his hand grabbing Troy's wrist, turning the gun, breaking the grip. Another hand grabbed the front of Troy's jacket, a sweep of a leg. Troy Halberd went down, skidding across the walkway, the gun clattering away into the dark. Guido's man, Leo, had Henderson, pulling him to safety. It was over in 3 seconds, all of it captured live. Troy was on his knees, gasping. Guido stood over him, a dark, immovable object. My hand was shaking, the adrenaline a wildfire in my veins, but I did not drop the mic. I walked over, my footsteps loud on the metal grate. I bent down, holding the pin of my jacket toward Troy's pathetic, whimpering face. "You are being recorded," I said, my voice resonating with a cold, clear power. "You are being recorded by thousands of ears." My words, my voice, echoed out across the city, carried on a signal that could not be stopped. The broadcast from the Mayor's Spine Bridge did not fix Greyhaven. It just split the signal clean in two. The city, which had always rumbled along at a low, predictable frequency of corruption, was now polarized. There was a high, sharp whine of outrage from the people who had listened to my feed, the people who had been silenced for decades. And there was a low, subsonic thrum of fury from the establishment. The Urban Safety Commission, in a transparent attempt to control the narrative, announced Troy Halberd was suspended. Pending review. It was a political stall, a way to bleed the outrage dry. Nard. The true power. Did what shadows do. They simply vanished. They went to ground, pulling their money, their contracts, and their influence deep beneath the city's surface, becoming a silent, threatening pressure. I was exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the warehouse, the sound of truth broadcast, and the terrifying confrontation on the bridge had finally receded, leaving behind a deep, aching fatigue. I wanted to go back to my booth, lock the heavy, soundproof door, and just lose myself in the simple, safe frequencies of an old folk song. I wanted to be Maisie the tech, not Maisie the reluctant revolutionary. But the emails kept coming. Henderson, my boss, was on a forced, paid vacation to recover from his ordeal. He forwarded them to me. They were not just messages of support, they were confessions. They were from longshoremen who had been forced to look the other way, from office clerks who had seen ledgers they did not understand, from students and baristas and old women who had felt the city's corruption like a cold draft. One message, from a community college student, stuck in my throat. It read, "I heard you. I thought everything was a lie. All the news, all the music. You made me believe in real sound again." I could not rest. I had tuned the entire city to a new frequency, and now I had to hold the signal. Guido saw the tremor in my hands that had not stopped. He saw the dark circles under my eyes. He came to the studio late one afternoon, not with a warning or a new piece of intel, but with a small, heavy ring of old-fashioned keys. "You need silence," he said. "I need a new city," when I countered, my voice flat. "I can offer the next best thing," he said. "Come with me." He drove us away from the harbor, into the old industrial sector, a place of brick, rust, and forgotten factories. He pulled his unassuming black truck to the curb in front of a modern, sterile parking garage. "This is it?" I asked, confused. "This is what is left," he said. He led me not to the garage's brightly lit entrance, but to a single, boarded-up door next to it. The paint was peeling, and a sign above it was so faded it was just a ghost of letters. The Blue Kestrel. He selected one of the old, tarnished skeleton keys and slid it into the lock. It was stiff. He had to put his shoulder into the heavy door, which scraped open with a low, wooden groan, releasing a cloud of dust and the smell of mold, stale beer, and decades of silence. Inside, the darkness was thick, a long, warped wooden bar, a few overturned stools, and in the far corner, covered by a heavy canvas tarp, was a familiar shape. Guido walked across the room, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He did not turn on a light, he just pulled the tarp off in one smooth motion. It was the upright piano from his story. It was scarred, the wood chipped, one of the middle keys missing entirely, but it was there. He wiped the thick dust off the bench with his sleeve and sat down. He did not look at me. He just looked at the keys, his large, scarred hands hovering over them for a long moment. Then he played. It was not jazz. It was not the complex music I imagined from his past. It was a simple, mournful melody. Just a few chords played slowly, deliberately. Each note was clear and perfect in the dusty air, a single, pure signal in the absolute silence. He was not performing. He was confessing. He was playing the sound of the man he had been before the fire, before the Rook Syndicate. He was playing his own lost history. I stood by the door, just listening. The music was a bridge, connecting his world of quiet violence and my world of precise sound. My mother was a seamstress, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the small, dead room, it sounded loud. He stopped playing, but his hands stayed on the keys. We lived in a one-room apartment, I continued, walking slowly toward him, my own footsteps echoing. Her sewing machine was never off. It was our income, our food, our heat. It was just this constant, driving rhythm. Thrum, thrum, thrum. A heavy, mechanical heartbeat. All day. All night. I stopped a few feet from the piano. I hated it at first. It was so loud. I could not think. But then I realized it was steady. It never wavered. It was the sound of safety. It was the sound of her working. I learned to love that predictable, reliable rhythm. I looked at him, at this man who had become the most unpredictable, chaotic signal in my life. That is why I hate shouting. I hate sudden noises. I hate gunshots. They are the sound of the rhythm breaking. They are the sound of the thread snapping. Guido turned on the bench to face me. The dim light coming through the cracks in the boarded-up window caught the silver of the new scar tissue on his shoulder. He reached out his hand, palm up. I took it. His skin was warm and rough. He pulled me gently, and I sat down next to him on the narrow bench. We sat in the dusty silence, the sound of his simple song still hanging in the air. Maisie, he said. It was not a question. It was just my name, a sound, a confirmation. Guido, I whispered. He lifted his other hand and cupped my face, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. He leaned in, and I met him halfway. We kissed. It was not the desperate, rain-soaked kiss of the greenhouse or the possessive, defiant kiss on the stage. It was slow. It was adult. It was a kiss of profound, weary understanding. It acknowledged the scars, the noise, the fear. It was a promise. We pulled apart, but only barely. Our foreheads rested together. Our hands were still clasped, fingers intertwined, resting on the piano's silent keys. I could feel his breath, steady and warm. Do not promise to protect me with war anymore, I whispered. My eyes closed. The bridge was too loud. I'm tired of the noise. I felt him nod, his forehead moving against mine. Promise me, I said, that you will protect me with the sun, with daylight, with the law, even when it is slow, even when it is quiet. There was a long pause. I could feel the struggle in him, the man who owned the night warring with the man who had just played the piano. I will learn silence, he finally vowed. His voice was rough with an emotion I had never heard from him. I will learn to stand in the sun, for you. It was the biggest concession he could possibly make. We need rules, I said, pulling back just enough to see his face. A commitment. If we are, whatever this is, we need a protocol. We cannot just keep reacting to each other's emergencies. He nodded, his dark eyes serious. New rules. I pulled a small notebook and a pen from my bag. I always have a notebook. We wrote it down, right there in the abandoned bar. Our voices, the only sound. 1, I said, writing. No dangerous decisions without mutual agreement. No more lone wolves. Not you, not me. Agreed, he said, his voice firm. 2, we use the law first, the OCR, the real police, the press. We use evidence. We use the light. First on tiens, he repeated, emphasizing the word, but not only. 3, I said, looking him in the eye. Force your world. It is the absolute last resort, only when the rhythm is broken. only when there is no other choice. No other choice, and he agreed. It was a contract, a treaty between our two worlds, written in a graveyard. I pulled out my portable recorder, the one I had used to record his heartbeat. "Read it," I said. "Maisie." "Read it, both of us. I need to hear it. I need the sound of it to be real. I need a file I can go back to." I pressed record. Maisie Stewart," I said, my voice clear and steady in the empty room. "And I, Guido Balestra," he said, his voice a low, binding rumble. We read the 3 rules, our voices overlapping slightly, a new, unified signal. It was a vow. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. I typed in the name Sun, Noise. We walked out of the blue Kestrel. Guido locked the heavy door, sealing the ghosts and the music inside once more. The dust began to settle. When we stepped outside, the world felt different. The rain, which had been threatening all day, had stopped. The wind was gone. The sky was a strange, flat, heavy gray. I looked toward the harbor, visible between the tall brick buildings. The sea was not moving. It was unnaturally calm. It was flat, like a sheet of dark, polished glass. It was not peace. It was the sound of the ocean taking a deep, slow breath, holding it. Just before the real wave, the final wave, was about to break, it was the sound of the city bracing itself for the loudest noise of all. The strange flat calm over Greyhaven lasted for 3 days. It was a suffocating, unnatural silence. The kind of quiet that means a frequency is being jammed. The city was holding its breath. Then Kite made contact. It was not an audio file this time. It was an in-person drop. Guido's courier, the one who was always delivering to my street, handed me a sealed envelope. This came to the Blackfin, from a man who looked like his shoes were on too tight. Inside was not a letter. It was a flowchart, a wiring diagram of pure corruption. Kite was not a ghost. He was an accountant at the Urban Safety Commission, a man who, as his attached note explained, was just tired of balancing the blood money. He had risked everything to get this to us. It was all there, in neat, damning boxes and arrows. Nard's protection money was not paid to the USC. It was donated to shell organizations, the Harbor Safety Community Fund, the Portside Revitalization Project. These were the same funds the USC chairman and Troy Halberd's father controlled, the same funds they used to grant security contracts back to Nard and to pay for Troy's lifestyle. It was a perfect closed loop of filth. And the note from Kite finished with one chilling sentence. "They are planning to wash it all. The annual Coastal Safety Day celebration is in 2 days. The chairman is announcing a Clean Harbor campaign. That is when they are going to delete the old ledgers and start the new ones. It is their bleach." The event was being held at the Asterian Glass Hall, the newest, most obnoxious building on the harbor, a massive monument to the city's ego. "They are going to whitewash their crimes in the biggest room in the city," I said to Guido in the greenhouse. "They are going to do it live, on camera." "A speech," Guido said, his voice hard. "They will promise safety. The people will applaud, and the signal will be lost." "No," I said, my fingers tracing the flowchart. "They are not just giving a speech. They are playing a video. The Gazette confirmed it, a 10-minute self-congratulatory video. They will hit play, and the feed will go to every screen in that hall, and to a live stream for the whole city." I looked up at him. "And you know who is providing the audio-visual equipment for the event?" Guido's eyes narrowed. "Wave Nest," I said, a cold, sharp smile finding my lips. "They wanted to show community partnership after the bridge incident. Henderson agreed. My equipment, my speakers, my system." The plan formed in my mind, clean and perfect, like a completed audio circuit. I met with my contact at the OCR, the one who had watched her servers melt. She was hungry for a win. "They are wiping the slate," I told her. "We're going to scratch it instead." The plan was simple and terrifying. I would compile the truth film, everything, the Nard ledger from the warehouse, The USC Ops chat logs, the full, unedited video from the mayor's spine bridge, and Kite's new flowchart. I would not load it onto the server where they could find it. I would hide it inside the speaker system itself. I spent the next 24 hours building it. I embedded the entire video and audio package into a firmware update for the high-end digital speakers WaveNest was lending them. When the USC technicians hit play on their glowing, self-promoting video, their own system, their own play command, would be the trigger. It would reject their file and instead pull my data from the speaker's internal memory. It would bypass their computers entirely. The hijacking will come from inside the sound. I explained to Guido, they cannot stop it at the source, because the speaker is the source. Guido did not like it. He did not like me being there. "You will be in a glass hall," he said, his voice a low growl, "surrounded by them, with nowhere to run. When that video plays, they will not just suspend Troy, they will retaliate instantly." "We agreed," I said, placing my hand on his chest, on the solid, steady rhythm I had recorded. "The sun, the light, this is the biggest light we have. This is the law, Rule 2. "Then I will be invoking Rule 3, he said, his hand covering mine. "The last resort. I cannot put my men in that hall. They will be screened. They will check for weapons." "No suits," I said. "No guns. Invisible, Guido. You promised." He nodded, but his eyes were dark, invisible. The night of the Coastal Safety Day celebration, the Asterian glass hall was lit up like a diamond. Chandeliers the size of cars threw fractured light everywhere. The city's elite were there, draped in silk and smelling of expensive perfume, drinking champagne, oblivious. Guido's invisible protection was a work of art. The string quartet playing in the lobby. They were musicians from a club the Rook Syndicate had protected for 30 years. The waiters, moving silently with trays of champagne, I recognized 2 of them from the Blackfin Hotel. The team of window cleaners from Blackfin, polishing the massive glass walls on the outside terrace, gave me a subtle nod as I walked in with my WaveNest technician pass. I went straight to the back, to the audio-visual control room. I did my final checks. I confirmed my secret firmware was nested deep in the system. I was terrified, but my hands were steady. This was just a mix, the most important mix of my life. I looked at the livestream monitor. The USC was broadcasting this themselves. The viewer count was already climbing. 10,000, 20,000, tens of thousands of people were about to watch this. I found my seat near the back, by the exit. Guido had insisted. At 8:00's clock, the chairman of the USC, a man with a silver mane of hair and a predatory smile, stepped onto the stage. The applause was polite. "Tonight," he began, his voice booming through my speakers, "we celebrate a new day for Greyhaven, a day of clarity, a day of security, a clean harbor campaign." He was washing the blood. I looked toward the control room, and I saw him. Troy Halberd. He was not supposed to be here. He was supposed to be suspended. He was not in a suit. He was in a black utility jacket, his face pale and slick with sweat. He was not looking at the stage. He was looking at the main power conduit. He was not there to watch. He was there to pull the plug. He and Nard were going to cut the power. My heart hammered. He was not just going to stop the feed. He was going to stop my feed. But I had anticipated this. I had been a sound tech my entire life. I knew power grids failed. I slipped out of my seat, moving into the backstage shadows while all eyes were on the chairman, hidden behind a stack of empty audio cases. I had planted my own backup, a small, portable, hand-crank generator wired directly to a single microphone and a separate, battery-powered broadcast router. It was my insurance. Sound does not need the city grid. It just needs a hand. On stage, the chairman was smiling. And now, a look at the future of our safe, clean harbor. He pressed the button on his podium. In the control room, Troy Halberd saw his cue. He ripped open the main panel and slammed his fist down on the central circuit breaker. The entire hall, all the chandeliers, all the stage lights, the video screens, went black. The sound of the chairman's speech cut off. The music died. The world was plunged into absolute, terrified darkness. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, followed by a rising tide of confused, fearful murmuring. The live stream went to a signal-lost screen. In the darkness, I moved. I ran to my backup generator. I picked up the microphone. My hand found the crank, and I began to turn it. A small, green LED lit up. I stepped from the shadows, walking onto the dark stage. A single spotlight, one I had wired to my own generator, flickered to life, hitting me. The crowd went silent. I spoke into the microphone, my voice echoing amplified through the speakers that were still alive, running on their own battery backups. "The power can be cut," I said, my voice steady and clear, "but the truth has its own rhythm." And behind me, the massive video screens, drawing power from their own emergency reserves, flickered to life, not with the chairman's video. With mine, the first image was the Enard ledger, the second, the USC ops chat log, the third, the raw, damning video of Troy Halberd on the Mayor's Spine Bridge, his voice screaming, "I will shoot you!" The crowd was frozen. 1,000 people staring, silent. Then a single woman in the front row screamed. The silence broke. The room erupted in a roar of pure, unfiltered rage. It was working. I looked up at Guido's men in the string quartet. They were watching the exits. I looked toward the terrace, and I saw Guido. He was on the second-floor balcony, dressed as a Blackfin waiter, a tray in his hand. He was not looking at me. He was not looking at the screen. He was staring, unmoving, at the dark alcove in the opposite corner of the balcony. I followed his gaze. There was nothing, just a shadow. And then the shadow moved, and the faint, unmistakable gleam of polished steel caught the light from my single, lone spotlight, a sniper. He was hidden. He was aiming. And he was not aiming at the chairman. He was aiming at me. The sniper was aiming. Time compressed. I saw the glint of the optic, the stabilization of his breath, the dark hole of the muzzle. I was frozen in my single, lonely spotlight, the perfect target. I did not hear Guido move. He was just suddenly there, a black-clad shadow detaching itself from the balcony's darkness, moving faster than I thought a man could move. He was not a waiter. He was a force of nature. He did not yell. He did not have time. He crossed the 20 feet of open balcony in a silent, desperate sprint. He launched himself over the railing, dropping 10 feet to the stage floor. He hit the ground in a roll and was on his feet, his body a solid projectile. He hit me. It was not a tackle. It was an act of pure preservation. His arms, all steel and coiled muscle, wrapped around my waist, lifting me off my feet. He spun us. A single, violent half-turn, putting his own body, his own back, between me and the sniper. The world exploded. A sound like a cannon in a library, a catastrophic, ear-splitting kaboom shook the very foundations of the hall. The sniper's high-velocity round, missing Guido by a fraction of an inch, slammed into the massive glass and steel support column I had been standing in front of. The tempered glass did not just crack, it vaporized, raining a sharp, glittering hail onto the stage. The crowd screamed, not in outrage, but in pure animal terror. They surged, a single panicked mass, toward the exits. "Now," a voice from the string quartet roared. It was Guido's men. They were not musicians. They yanked a single, heavy release lever. The massive, 30-foot wide steel mesh backdrop, the one meant to display the Clean Harbor logo, came crashing down. It fell like a guillotine, hitting the stage with the sound of a train wreck, a clang that rattled my teeth. It landed perfectly, a solid wall of metal sealing us off, a fortress on the stage. I was on the floor, pinned beneath Guido's solid, panting weight. My microphone still clutched in my fist. My ears were ringing from the gunshot, my cheek pressed against the dusty stage floor. "Are you hit?" he growled, his voice a low vibration against my back. "No," I gasped. "Are you?" "Get ready to move," was all he said. He rolled off me, but I grabbed his arm. No, my broadcast. I crawled, my knees scraping, back to my hand-cranked generator. The single spotlight was still on. "Do not panic," I yelled into the microphone, my voice shaking but amplified, booming through the hall. "Do not be afraid. Stay calm, the exits are being cleared. Please, just look at the screen. Look at the truth." On the massive screens, which were still running on their own power, the show continued. My truth film had reached its climax. The audio shifted. It was now the chairman's voice. Not from his speech, but the AI-cloned, watermarked audio I had built. It was reading, in his own perfect, synthesized, and undeniable cadence. The Nard ledger. It was confessing, line by line, to the Harbor Safety Community Fund payments. It was a confession from a digital ghost, and it was holding the entire panicked room in thrall. Guido was on his feet. "Maisie, stay behind the steel." "Where are you going?" "He has to reload," Guido said, his eyes on the balcony. He grabbed a heavy, solid steel music stand, ripping it from its base. He was no longer a man of silence. He was a creature of action. He vaulted over a stack of speakers and disappeared into the shadows toward the spiral staircase. I heard the chase, a clang as the sniper fired again, his bullet striking the steel backdrop, a useless, angry ping, then the sound of feet on metal, a body slamming into the glass wall of the balcony. They were fighting, a short, brutal silhouette against the flashing blue lights of the city outside. "Nard never falls," I heard the sniper yell, his voice thin and desperate. He was trying to push Guido back, to raise his rifle. And then a new sound cut through the chaos. A high-pitched, obnoxious, digital ringtone. It was the ringtone, the custom alert I had captured from the USC Ops chat, the sound from the white van. It was coming from the sniper's pocket. I heard it. My fingers, moving on pure instinct, flew across my small, backstage console. I isolated the frequency of that ringtone, boosted the gain by 40 decibels, and slammed the main fader. The sound of that ringtone, that tiny, secret, damning sound exploded through the Asterian Hall's PA system, a deafening, repeating jingle of guilt. Guido, on the balcony, heard it. He grabbed the sniper, slamming the man's phone-filled pocket against the iron railing. "Answer your phone," Guido's voice, catching a nearby ambient mic, boomed through the hall. "It is a call from the warehouse." It was the final nail. The great glass doors of the Asterian Hall, the ones the crowd had been surging against, burst open. But it was not the crowd. It was the Harbor Vigil Unit, the HVU. They flooded the room, dozens of them in full tactical gear, their movements swift and professional. The OCR, my last-ditch legal hope, had finally come through, acting on my kill switch signal the moment the power went out. They had activated the only clean unit in the city. The game was over. From my fortress on the stage, I watched it all. I watched the HVU swarm the stage, their weapons down, securing the panicked crowd. I watched a team swarm the balcony, cuffing the sniper whose phone was still, pathetically, playing its incriminating jingle. I watched, with a satisfaction so deep it ached, as they walked over to the stunned, pale-faced USC chairman and snapped handcuffs on his wrists. I saw them drag Troy Halberd out of the control room, his face a mask of ruined, weeping entitlement. And the whole time, my live stream, which had rerouted through my battery-powered generator, captured every single second. Tens of thousands of people across Greyhaven were watching the city's corrupt heart being ripped out. Live. I stood up, my legs shaking so hard I could barely stand. I walked to the center of the stage, back into my one true spotlight. The hall was a ruin of broken glass, flashing lights, and the stunned silence of justice. I looked at the microphone in my hand. "Sound it," I said, my voice echoing. "The only sound in the massive room. We think it is just for entertainment. We think it is just noise in the background. But it is not." I took a deep, shuddering breath. Sound is evidence, sound is a shield, and tonight, sound was a light. I saw him, Guido, and he was walking toward me, his waiter's jacket gone, his white shirt torn at the shoulder, smudged with grime. He did not stop. He did not slow. He just walked through the police, through the debris, until he was standing in front of me. He pulled me into him, his arms a steel band, his face burying in my hair, the crowd of police, of witnesses. It all just fell away. There was only the sound of his breathing, the solid, steady rhythm of his heart against my ear. "I learned silence," he whispered, his voice a rough, private sound meant only for me, but my microphone was live, and it caught his vow. "I learned to stand in the sun, Maisie, but I will always make noise to protect you, always." He pulled back, his hands framing my face, his dark eyes, the color of the harbor at midnight, were not dark. They were full of light. He kissed me, right there, on the stage, in the middle of the wreckage, surrounded by police. He kissed me. It was not the slow, tender kiss of the greenhouse. It was deep. It was rough. It was a claim, a kiss of survival, a kiss of equals, who had just fought a war and, against all odds, had won. And as if on cue, the master electrician, having finally figured out the breaker, threw the main switch. The chandeliers, all 100 of them, flickered, sparked, and then blazed to life. The hall was flooded with brilliant, blinding light. The remaining crowd, the police, the stunned politicians, they all saw us. And the entire, shattered hall, in a single, unified, spontaneous roar, erupted in applause. We won. We did not just win the night, we won the city. The Rook Syndicate, under Guido's new leadership, quietly pulled out of the dock management business. The illegal money vanished, and in its place, a new organization appeared, the Kestrel Arts Fund, a community trust dedicated to supporting local artists and media. I was asked to be its primary consultant. Waveness 92.7 became the #1 station in Greyhaven, the undisputed leader in media literacy. I did not just play music, I taught the city how to listen. The morning after, I was in the greenhouse on the roof of the Blackfin, the place where it had all really begun. The sun was rising, a flood of clean, golden honey over the harbor. I had my recorder. I placed the small, sensitive microphone on my own chest. I hit record. I closed my eyes, just listening, thump thump day, thump thump. The rhythm was not the frantic, terrified beat of a mouse. It was not the panicked rabbit I had been. It was steady. It was calm. It was my own. Guido sat down next to me, holding 2 cups of coffee. He said nothing. He just placed his large, warm, scarred hand over mine, his fingers covering my hand and the recorder. "From now on," I whispered, opening my eyes to the new, clean light. "We are going to live large, but we are going to do it without being loud." He smiled, and for the first time, in the bright, clear light of morning, Greyhaven heard the most beautiful, perfect silence. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Please drop a comment below to share your thoughts and let us connect. Do not forget to subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by even more people.